Today's generation is the click, edit, and post generation. A suitable phone with a decent camera, an Instagram account, and some nicely presented food, some good snapshots, and other food blogger is born. But is that really it? Then what are those amazing elaborate writings on Blogspot that describe food not only through pictures but also with words? So today's episode is for all those who still fantasize about beautifully written food blogs. Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Anubhav Sapra Show, a show where you bond over food, people, culture, travel, and stories. Today we have a very talented new age food blogger currently running an Instagram family of over 40.2k followers, here to help budding food bloggers discover the true essence of writing and publishing blogs. Please welcome Anjana Gopakumar.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction. Thank you.
I remember last year during the lockdown, we invited you to speak about the food of Kerala.
Yeah.
And today we are going to talk more about food blogging. And if someone like every day, as said in the introduction, every day we see a new account. And in fact, I don't know if it's true or not, but the most searched hashtag on Instagram might be food. I'm not sure, but every day you see a new Instagram account or different kinds of food blogs. I remember like when I started my food blogging journey in 2010, and there used to be
Oh, wow.
very selected food bloggers in Delhi. I'm talking about only about Delhi, and there used to be like you can simply used to could have count it on your fingers. Oh, this is the one person who is
True.
writing about restaurant. There's the other person writing about street food. There used to be very limited number of food bloggers. But now over the years, in fact, in last 5 6 years, I have seen. I was talking to someone today morning that there are so many bloggers, and I don't know like how to figure out which is the best blog and how to figure out what kind of content one person is writing. People start from food, then they move on to other kind like health, lifestyle, everything. So I
Yeah.
think before we start talking about all of that, we request you to first introduce yourself to our audience.
Yes. Namaskaram. My name is Anjana Gopakumar, and like he introduced, I write blogs on thankgodimfat.com. That's my website, and I post like really creative videos and reels and all that on Instagram, and I tweet a bit. I don't have a lot of followers on Twitter though. I'm trying to build it because I like that platform also quite a lot these days because of the responses and because of the activeness of people there. So my blogging journey actually started as a detour. I wanted to be a chef, and I ventured into food blogging because I couldn't. I was trying to be a trained culinary professional. I was studying at Vaksha Manipal, Welcome Group Graduate School of Hotel Administration, Manipal University, and I kind of had a health issue and I had to drop out and I couldn't pursue it. I'm allergic to the dust of spices and refined flour and caster sugar. It's pretty ironic to be honest. So I kind of finished 2 years and then it didn't work out. I can cook now. I'm better. I've been undergoing treatment for the past 3 to 4 years. I can finally be back. I'm cooking now. I'm back in the kitchen. I'm slowly building my immunity towards it. But I'm not sure if I'm there yet commercially. Like I cannot produce in mass scale because that's going to affect my health again. So I was depressed and I started writing about food. And it was pretty much like something that happened out of the blue, not something that was planned or I wanted to do, but it just happened.
So when was it? Which year was it when you
Um,
started blogging?
okay, so 2016 was the year when I started my first blog. Before Thank God I'm Fat, I was interning in Kanpur and in a restaurant and in Lucknow. And I was actually I had planned to do it in Lucknow, but I went to Kanpur and I did it, and I got intrigued by the food culture of Lucknow. Like I went to experience the street food. I learned about basket chaat for the first time in Lucknow. Shami kebabs and everything. Shirmal, Baka Khani. It just kind of made me fascinated. I'm like, there's so much more than what I actually know about. So I started a WordPress blog. It's still there, but I don't use it anymore. It's called nkural.org because my roots are Tamil. I wanted to embrace it, so I gave a Tamil word to it. Nkural means my voice. So that's what I named it as. I didn't know how to start a blog. I just started from scratch. But then after that, I dropped out and I came and I thought, why not take it forward? And I started Thank God I'm Fat. So that was probably 2017 because I was working in Bangalore even after I dropped out. So I started this Instagram page. I didn't name it Thank God I'm Fat then. I was just, it was just Anjana Gopakumar, but it was for food. And I started posting things I was eating in Bangalore. Then I thought I should actually like work on a blog and write in detail. And in 2017, 18, if I'm right, 2018 is when I started thankgodimfat.com.
So the Instagram account came first, then your blog, or
Yes,
first?
it did.
Okay.
It did. The Instagram came first, and then I changed it to Thank God I'm Fat, and then the blog came thankgodimfat.com.
Wow. So I wanted to ask this question later, but I think I'll ask it first. Uh, as we talked about Instagram, and these
Yeah.
days, like we make a distinction between macro blogging and micro food blogging. So can you elaborate on that?
My perception of macro blogging is just blogging about whatever we find and not carving a niche, to be honest. But that's also, I'm no one to judge, or I'm no one to say that that's not supposed to be done and this is supposed to be done, so I respect that as well. But I personally feel that while we do macro blogging, we lose the essence of what we're trying to do. It's just everything at everywhere. And if I'm a follower, I would like to focus on a blog for the information I get from that. So according to me, microblogging gives you a select cream crowd of followers. And macroblogging is definitely, if you're like a celebrity, like a personality who wants to give out their life, they can probably speak about 100 different things. But if you're doing something specifically for something, I think microblogging, that's my understanding, I'm not sure if I'm right. So I kind of focus on food culture, and food history a little bit. And I want to impart whatever I know, not just talk about what I'm eating, but also talk about the culture it has, or what do the people who actually make it think about the food, or see, we say today I posted something called what is Sichuan or Szechuan, and people just started commenting it's a spicy sauce made of dry red chilies, or which is not. So there's much more than what we actually eat, right? We need to know your food, we need to know what we're eating. It kind of embraces the whole idea. That's what I've tried to focus on, with a little bit of personal touch. I post about my family on my stories, I don't post it on the feed. So my feed is basically like the micro blogging unit, but my stories are like a macro blogging. I sing there, I post about my family, I post about my daily life or whatever I encounter. So it's like a mix for me.
So microblogging is more about say Instagram,
Hmm.
Twitter, those
Hmm.
Facebook kind of uh,
Yeah,
social media pages, and then macro is more about a proper
the
having a
website.
proper website or a blog page. It could be Tumblr, it could be say Blogspot or WordPress,
Exactly.
where you write in detail about
Right,
a
right, right.
place or the food or anything.
Right.
Am I
So
correct?
I am not sure. So this was my understanding. I'm learning something new. Like I'm really not sure about. Like I've not really dived deep into that whole sector. I've been just doing what I've been doing. So this is something new for me. So if it is that, then I would say that it there was like this period of controversy in Kerala food blogging scene, where the question was that who can you call a blogger? Is it someone who posts on Instagram, or should you have a blog, a domain
Hmm.
that you own? So this was something that had that the conversation kind of had both ends of the spectrum. There were people saying that is it privilege that people keep saying that you can't be called a blogger if you only have Instagram, because buying a domain, having a hosting, actually putting it out there kind of costs you a little bit of money. But there are free ways to do it as well. So the conversation kind of went from privilege to, are you suppressing people who are trying to do something? It's like how TikTok had a boom, and then everybody was becoming a celebrity, or everybody was becoming something. So but for me it kind of filters it down, right? Who's trying to put more effort into doing what they're doing? It's not, Instagram is like click, post, anything can be viral, you cannot predict. You can be putting the least effort into something and things can go viral. But for something to be read, something to be actually in depth research and to be accepted, you need to reach out to the target audience. I feel there's more work. If this is the explanation of macro blogging, then there's more work in macro blogging than micro blogging.
I'll just share my experience. As I
Hmm.
said, like I remember I was a big fan of a blog, Delhi Street Food, which Rahul Verma, I think he used to write long back. I'm a big fan of him. Like he writes on in the Hindu newspaper every Saturday. Today also morning I've read his piece where he's
Wow.
written about Chole Bhature. I've been following him for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
He's been writing about street food for almost 30 years now in Delhi, and he's my favorite food writer in India, in fact, in the world. And then he used to run a blog as well.
Okay.
So a blog was more about the places where he used to venture out, explore, and more in detail.
Mm.
And every week he used to write about a particular place, and the food columns were something very different.
Right.
For me, that's the understanding. And then secondly, as you said, blogs are also free. Like anyone can
Yeah.
go and create a blog spot. I remember even I was working that time, so I created a blog spot, street food of Delhi blogspot, and I used to write about the places to eat, where to eat, what to eat on that blog spot. So it was free of cost. Nothing was paid as such.
Very expensive. Yeah.
Yeah. So now coming to that, do you see any difference between food writing and food blogging, or is it?
Uh, Personally, I do. To tempt someone using just words is a skill altogether, I feel. Video, it does, okay, editing does a huge load of work. Like you need to be, there are shots which are like, those b-roll cuts and all, make it magnificent, and you need a lot of skill. Videos are self-explanatory to an extent, right? You see a video, you drool. You see a photo of a food, you drool. But to write about it and give that idea to the person who's reading it, to give the idea of the texture of the food or the taste of the food, or kind of transport you into that realm of food, it's a challenge. It is like how you just mentioned about your favorite food writer and how you look up to his writings. It's something else. I love reading rude food columns by Veer Sangvi. Like it's just honest and pure, and yet it conveys a story at the same time. I love reading Kalyan Karmakar's blogs. He does, and there's a food blogger from Kerala. Her name is Tinu Terence. It's Let's Talk Food. She writes, and I get transported into her life for 3 seconds. I just wonder how she writes about how her mom used to cook this and how she used to wait, come after school, running, just the aroma of the food, and she would just dig in and not look at anywhere else or whatever. It's just beautiful. I think it does have a huge impact. Food writing kind of is you need to polish it over time, just like videos. Yeah, it does, but it's another experience. Got two different contrasting experience, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So that's the beauty of blogs. The way you have
Yes.
just described the blog of Tinu,
Yeah.
that's how you, like, by reading just an article or a blog, you get transported back to the experience.
Yes.
Start experiencing it.
Yes.
So that's the beauty. And many people who are listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, they would be maybe on the verge of starting a blog. So would you like to give any like pointers to keep in mind while writing food blogs?
Recently, I did a session for Nirmala College of Hospitality and Tourism Department. And the only thing I tell everywhere, the one thing I've learned from whatever I've done is to start. No matter what you have with you, it's not about the gear, it's not about the equipment, it's about your heart. Right? If you feel like you can do it, you just should start no matter what. Like when I started nkural.org, I was sitting in my friend's house in Kanpur, and we had just come back from Lucknow after eating so much food that and the worst part, I don't have good pictures of those days. It's just that I had like a very small phone, and I just click random pictures, no aesthetics, nothing. I still have those. I wish I could write about Lucknow now better, in better ways. But I started no matter what. I didn't have good pictures. I didn't have like a proper laptop back then. I borrowed my friend's laptop. I just started, just no matter what, and that gave me a push to actually reach to Thank God I'm Fat, or still it gives me the push. Every new thing that I decide to do, I just do it impromptu. But for some people it might work, otherwise they might need a little bit of planning. But I would say don't wait, because the minute you keep waiting, someone else is doing something better than you. You always get a head start by just going ahead. It might not be your best move, it might not be um that one solid standard which will keep you on top of the list or whatever, but beginning will give you so much satisfaction. So if you're listening to this, and if you're deciding, once you finish listening to the whole thing, please just start. That's all I would say.
Great, great. That's true. So, and then now moving on to what are the different components of food blogging?
um I recently saw, I usually show this video whenever I take sessions or like workshops. It's a where Chef Thomas Zachariah, the ex-executive chef of Bombay Canteen, he's speaking to under 25 people that the minute you choose to be a food blogger or a food media person, you have to play multiple roles. You're not just the cook, you're not just the editor, you're not just your producer, like the fund, you're not just the person who's eating, you're everything. When you're starting off, you don't have a lot of support. So what he said kind of rings in my head still, that you need to learn everything by yourself before you spread out. So the components I would say is, you'll have to learn how to click a good picture. You'll have to learn to note down what, or remember about the food you eat, what the other person told you, so that you can actually craft a story, because storytelling is better than actually feeding people the information just like that. Hey, I ate this, this had this much spice. Rather, if you say this spice came from this place, or that's what she told me, if you make it a story. So the minute you take so many roles, you kind of fill all the components of food blogging. It's like you take the role of a photographer, you take the role of a videographer, you take the role of an editor. You make a script out of it. You schedule it, so you're basically doing the logistic work as well. You're posting it, you make a plan, so you're like the manager for yourself. There's a lot of work that goes behind each content that you make, coming up with something creative each time you want to post. You can't just be posting what everybody else is doing, like what DFW does. Like what you guys do is something magical, right? You guys do so many things. There are videos, there are talks, there are the Facebook series that you invited me to. I'm grateful, like I got to share a piece of my food culture with people. That takes a lot of thinking, I believe, like to come up with something unique, something that could provide your followers with, and you could stand out as well. So for me, I think for me it starts with planning. You plan, then you organize all your resources, like you keep everything together, whatever work you may do, then you execute. But that doesn't finish there. Then you market. You need to market it even further so that it reaches out to people. So this marketing can start from the first step onwards. It is like from inviting somebody who already has a niche customer or follower base is itself marketing, because you will reach out to their followers as well, or the people who read you as well. Or you can do post execution marketing, which would be, once you're done, you can probably ask your people to share or tag people who could reshare, or use relevant hashtags, even if it's Twitter or Instagram. If it's a blog, proper SEO, search engine optimization, keywords, focus keywords, external links, internal links. It's just you learn as you go. And once marketing is done, you revisit it time and again. You go back to something, and probably you can develop something out of it. Like was part of you guys last year, and this year, like I'm revisiting the whole space, and it just makes it even better. It's like wine, it just gets better with age. So I think that's the streamline.
Now, it sounds a lot of work. Huh? Huh? Starting from planning to final execution,
I
and
think without
then
even planning, it just happens. This is
uh,
exactly how it happens. We just don't realize, I
mhm.
feel.
And in food blogging also, Anjana, we have different like niche areas. You can say some people write recipe blogs, some people write, as I said, more about street food, some people write about regional cuisine, some about spices, then
Right.
some would be writing about, say, restaurants. So what should be the focus? Like, say, if someone is writing a food blog, it should be a mix of everything, or should one focus on one area and do it better?
I think it's a very tricky question for me to answer, because I have not yet figured out what exactly I want to do. Like, I've had multiple ideas, I've had multiple thoughts. When I started off, I started off with, I can just give you my experience.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
stating anything.
yeah.
When I started off by reviewing restaurants in my hometown, which is Trivandrum. Then I started reviewing restaurants in Kochi, in Kerala. Then I started traveling. I started reviewing, like, I started visiting places like Mumbai, Bangalore, Delhi. Or I started like posting about those places. But my focus was still and always on Kerala because that's where like I've spent a lot of time and I know more about the food culture of Kerala. Then I realized as I was learning about more and more about the food culture of Kerala, I wanted to promote it on Instagram and let people know on Twitter, on my blogs, that there's something like this also about Kerala food, not just what popularly we know about. So my focus was on that for a while. Meanwhile, I wanted to write a book. I started working on a book that got stopped because of Corona. I was extensively traveling throughout Kerala. Like I started going to started talking to food writers about history. Started reading history books. Reached out to a couple of authors, but then because of COVID, I had to halt it. So I pivoted and I'm working on another kind of book, not exactly rich with information, but something simple and cooking and easy. So the whole lockdown phase had me dive deeper into recipes because that was what was being requested for a lot by my followers. Mm, because people were sitting at home and they wanted something to do, and they understood that whatever was made at restaurants were easily recreated at home. So they wanted more exciting recipes, and the recipe blog section kind of boomed during the whole pandemic. So I pivoted to that book for survival. It was not something I really wanted to do, but I wanted to maintain a balance on my blog. So I started adding recipes to my blog. I actually created a section on thangodandfat.com for recipes, and even here, but I mix it with a little bit of food history, food culture, recipes, family recipes. But there are people who still stick to what they do. Like there are bloggers who still review restaurants. During the pandemic, they just reviewed cloud kitchens and takeaways.
Mhm.
There are people who only speak about food history, or Amrita of Life, who recently ventured out into Ayurvedic life, and she was a food stylist and food photographer. In between, she pivoted and she's now talking about um, Ayurveda for daily life. Like she talks about dinacharya and creates these unique recipes using Ayurvedic principles and all of that. I think you can pivot. It just as you go, you keep evolving. So it's not necessary that you have to stick to something and be just doing that. If you're
Mhm.
happy doing something extra, as long as it makes you happy or it reaches out to people, I think you're good to go.
Yeah, you have like beautifully summarized it, saying that you have to maintain a balance
Yes,
between your areas of interest plus the what's in the trend. You can say what the followers want to know more
exactly.
about. It could be recipes or the specific
Correct.
stories which you are doing, and you have to maintain a balance on both the spectrum. So
Yes.
now I think this is the question which everyone would like to know more about it, about monetizing the food blogs. Everyone who is running a food blog, I think they have in their mind like over the period of time, they want to monetize it. They want to make it their part of their what do you say uh,
Livelihood.
livelihood.
Yes.
So how to do that?
To be honest, my only monetization so far has come from Instagram because of brand collaborations, and not yet from blogs, though I have added Google AdSense to my thangodandfat.com. So if you're having a blog, you can always reach out to the easiest source, which is Google Ads. You can just sign up. It's just a plugin. You can just attach a Google AdSense to your blog, and Google will direct. You can even choose, customize the kind of ads that will come up on your feed. You have all the facilities. You can completely control what kind of ads your readers must see on your blog, and each time they click on the ad, you keep getting added money there, and once you reach a particular limit, Google will start sending you money. I have not reached that limit yet. Probably I should write more, probably I should drive traffic in more. I'm still working on it. That's one way you can make money. If you're doing Instagram blogging, create really good content and have like a really engaged follower base, and brands will reach out to you. Brands will come to you and say, listen, we need so and so many reels, we need so and so many IGTV videos, we need swipe ups, we need call to action on your story. How much will you be charged? The only thing I would say is know your followers, know how much you can quote, ask your other people and learn what's the market rate for it in your place, or never undersell yourself and quote a decent amount. And because they are big brands and they have a marketing spend, but make sure your followers know that you're promoting a product, and be honest yourself. Do not promote something just for money. If you don't endorse it, do not promote it. For example, I am not somebody who promotes or endorses veganism. I am okay with people who are vegan. I respect them, but I personally don't endorse veganism. So there are brands who reach out to me saying this is a vegan product, so I don't take it up. Not it might offer me money, but I don't. It's completely personal. I'm just putting it out there. But that's one way of making money: brand endorsements. Brands will come to you. Then you can have outbound. This is inbound. You can have outbound. For example, you want to grow. You want to have like a niche market. You can go reach out to a very good brand that you aspire or to look up to, and tell them that you have so many followers, you have influence over these many people, you have a good engagement rate, and you would like to do a giveaway. You can they can give you money, and you can give them a proper return of investment for whatever they're investing. What do they get in return? Probably you'll send your followers to their page or to their website traffic can be increased. Whatever you do, return of investment is what matters. How much they put in, what can you give them back in terms of data is very important today. So if you can give them that, you can make money in so many ways. There are unique ways and you can make market. Like if you once you start blogging, you start dealing with a lot of restaurant owners, or you learn the restaurant functioning. You can even take up small consultancy works, and you can even market them through your blog. Like you can help an entrepreneur to set up a cafe from scratch, because you have experience, you've seen it firsthand. You can tell them that this is the POS system that works. This you have a contact with a chef, he can come train your staff. You have a contact with the service staff. You also know a couple of influencers, and you ask them or you quote them money, saying that this much amount I can charge from you, and I will do all the work. So, but always have, like, documents ready whenever you're doing. Send an invoice. Make sure that they don't cheat you. Take an advance amount in hand before you execute a work, because once you put it out there on media, you can't take it back. People have already seen it. Your work is done. So they might cheat you. They might say that they don't have money. They're done. So always take an advance amount, have an invoice. These ways you can make money. These are the ways so far I have explored.
Mhm.
If there's anything beyond, I would still learn and I would still love to know.
Yeah. So now you mentioned rightly about brand collaborations, but how to approach them? Or
Yeah, makes sense. If it depends on what kind of brand you're approaching. If they're a small scale brand, you might directly know the owner or the entrepreneur himself. You can reach out to them. If it's a big brand, if it's a multinational company, if it's a huge brand, depending on what their hierarchy or structure of organization is, you can reach out to the concerned person. For example, if you're reaching out to a logistics company, delivery company, or a food rating company like Zomato, their marketing team handles the marketing activities. So you can probably go to their website, get contact of their marketing team, and mail them saying that, listen, I have a great idea. But you need to have something that stands out. They might already have potential ideas. They might reach out to you as well. You might have something better. You can reach out to them through mail. If you're reaching out to brands that do not have a marketing team altogether, but they might have an outsourced brand marketing team. So there are so many influencer agencies these days. These agencies will have people, so you can talk to other influencers, get their contact, say that I want to reach out to one of the brands. I've not gotten a single brand incoming activity yet. I want to try myself and reach out to them. So you can probably reach out to one of these influencer marketing agencies and get their contact, email them saying that you have these many followers, this is your engagement rate, you have people who will actually actively purchase your product, or why this product should market with you, why it is suitable for you. You can probably create like a PPT, even if you have time,
Mhm.
like a proper presentation, a deck, or you can have like a Word document saying that you can do this and that, and reach out to them. And the influencer agency might have a brand who might be looking for an influencer just like you, and they might have just missed you because they didn't, you were not visible enough. And once that happens, it's well and good. Like my first brand marketing was outbound. I reached out to a small app in Trivandrum. It was called Onne, which means one. It was the first food delivery app in Trivandrum before Uber Eats, before Zomato, before
Mhm.
Swiggy came to Trivandrum. because it's a third tier city, so it takes time to come here.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Onne, and it was not a paid activity, but I wanted to mark myself out there. So I told them, listen, if you can arrange restaurants to give my followers food coupons, I can host a contest on my feed. People can comment answers about the restaurant or about the cafe, and you guys can give the hamper. This was
Mhm.
my first outbound marketing activity. From there, I've done so far approximately 15 to 20 brands, including Kerala Tourism, Modern Bread, Elite, big brands that are part of Kerala, as well as all over India. So I've had that chance because don't be ashamed to reach out to them. It's
Mhm.
okay as long as you get to grow.
I was while talking to you, I was in fact checking your Instagram as well. The Insta page which you have is amazing. The
Thank
kind
you.
of content which you put in, like say about recipes, then you have everything on your blog, like chefs to follow, culinary,
Thank you.
so maybe someone who is interested in food, it's great way to know more about food through your page. So
Thank you.
now I want to dig more into Instagram. On
Yes.
Instagram, you have so many features these days, and I was reading it yesterday. I shared it my team. Let me just give me a second. I will read it out. On Instagram, they said that now they have changed the Instagram no longer a photo sharing app. Says
Right.
the head of Instagram. They said Instagram is no longer a photo sharing app. We are trying to build new experiences primarily in four key areas: creators, video, shopping, and messaging.
Right.
And then he said there's some serious competition right now. TikTok is huge, and YouTube is even bigger. So every day, like say on Instagram, you have so many features. How to decide like which one should use? Like say you have Reels, you have IGTV, you have photos, you have stories. You have so many features just on one app, and then
True.
even planning what goes well with your audience or what goes well on your Instagram handle. How to decide that? I think everyone is sometimes like, even like we used to do one post every day, but sometimes we get to know that no, the photos are not working, let's start posting reels.
True.
Then nowadays, as I just recently read, it's yesterday's on 1st July news, which I'm reading here. So there it says that now it's not a photo sharing app, and it's more about creators, video, shopping, and messaging. So
Right.
how to decide that?
Absolutely wonderful. I mean, spot on. I keep thinking about it. I keep thinking about that too when I'm pitching to a brand. Like when they say something, I kind of add stuff to that and say, I can do this too, I can do that too. Not just because I'm providing the brand with something, but I'm also growing at the same time.
Mhm.
So just like how we mentioned, influencers or creators or bloggers are pivoting, or they pivot when the time or calls for. Instagram is also growing, rising to challenges, and they're trying to build something new every day. Like even Twitter or even Facebook, like just how Clubhouse started, the
Mhm.
whole vocal thing. I'm sure big giants like Facebook and Instagram will bring such a feature into their app soon. As soon as TikTok went down in India, Instagram came up with Reels.
Mhm.
And Reels are being self promoted by Instagram. Reels are having a huge reach. And what TikTok did was kind of work and play on the attention span of people, which is very little these days. So I think we can use that to our benefit as well. Reels are self promoted, they take up minimal time, and you get to convey so much. So Reels are like super effective on Instagram these days. But before you do just all Reels, we need to understand what our crowd wants. Like our followers started following us for something. Are we sticking on to that? Like one fine day we suddenly start just doing random food reels and or just follow random trends, they might unfollow you because they didn't follow you in the first place for that. They followed you for something that you did and they absorbed or they liked. So for I believe my people who actually enjoy my work, or my critics, people who criticize my work, they look forward to information that I provide. They look forward to my catalogs, they look forward to the recipes. So I need to stick on to that and expand my horizon within the options available. So maybe if I give a recipe but in an IGTV mode, they'd still watch if it's an interesting recipe. If I give a catalog where it's still about food, they'll reach out to me. Whatever gives you more information in less time, or more time but very attractive, that they have something to be glued on till the end, works for any case. Then we narrow it down onto the niche of your followers. What do they like? They might like more information. So how do you categorize all those information and put it in one place so that it's easy for them to access? Guides. Inside Instagram, there are guides. So you can collectively bring all that information they might like into one group and put it in guides. So I have a couple of guides like Rasamulla Malayalam, where I talk about Malayalam alphabets and words. So my season 1 was about Sadhya,
Mhm.
all the words, all the dishes of Sadhya, and I clubbed it into one guide. So if anyone wants to learn about that, they just have to go to the guide and pick that post. You don't have to go through my entire feed. All my catalogs are in one place because it's not scattered all over the feed. So I think depends. First, you pivot according to the time. Next, you grow, eventually evolve, depending on what your followers want. But to be honest, if we keep the goal as more quality followers than just numbers, we have a better idea of what we should be doing with our feed.